Jose was a 90-year-old man whose frail appearance reflected years of struggle and abandonment. Her disheveled white hair, wrinkled skin, and torn clothes told the story of a life that was once stable but, through merciless circumstances, turned into misery. He had already had a family, a decent job, and an ordinary life. However, the death of his wife, the loss of his job, and, eventually, estrangement from his children led him into a cycle of poverty from which he was never able to escape. Now, living on the streets of a big city, Jose wandered aimlessly, looking for ways to survive. His body, once strong and healthy, was now a frail, tired shell. Each step was painful, and the constant cold of sleepless nights on the sidewalks made him shiver. Still, he maintained what dignity he had left, never begging, only accepting help when offered. On a particularly difficult day, Jose found himself outside an elegant cafe, whose glass windows showed warm, comfortable people enjoying drinks and meals. The aroma of fresh coffee and freshly baked cakes filled the air. Hungry and without having eaten anything all day, Jose hesitated before entering, trying to gather the courage to order something to eat. He knew he wasn't welcome in places like this, but the need spoke louder. Upon walking through the cafe's door, the contrast between the welcoming warmth of the environment and the biting cold of the street was immediate. Jose felt the heat envelop his thin body, but it didn't last long. As soon as he entered, eyes turned to him. The customers, who until then had been chatting animatedly, began to whisper. Some wrinkled their noses, others averted their eyes, clearly uncomfortable with his presence. Jose walked to the counter with uncertain steps, waiting to be served. He only had a few coins in his pocket, but he thought it might be enough for a coffee or a loaf of bread. However, the attendant, a young man with an arrogant expression, barely looked at him. Disdainfully, the attendant made a face and continued serving the other customers, completely ignoring Jose's presence. Feeling increasingly embarrassed, Jose tried to get the attendant's attention with a weak, polite voice. "Please, could I have some coffee?" His voice almost disappeared in the environment full of laughter and conversations. But instead of being served, he was greeted with discreet laughter from some customers, who started making jokes about his appearance. "You're in the wrong place, old man. We don't give free food here," said the attendant, in a sarcastic tone, making others laugh even more. Jose felt the weight of humiliation grow. His face flushed, not with anger, but with embarrassment. He didn't want to beg. "I just wanted some food to keep warm on that cold day." Dejected and with teary eyes, Jose turned to leave the cafe. What dignity he still had seemed to disappear with every step he took towards the door. The heat he felt when he entered turned into a cold even more intense than what he faced on the streets. Jose, with his hands shaking and his eyes hopeful, walked towards the coffee counter. He didn't want to cause trouble. He just wanted something to warm his fragile body and satisfy some of his hunger. As he approached, he tried to make eye contact with the attendant, a young man who seemed more concerned with impressing other customers than offering courteous service. Jose took a deep breath, gathering all his courage to ask for something. "Please, a coffee. I have some coins, will that be enough?" His voice was low and tired, almost like a whisper, hoping to be heard and treated with a minimum of compassion. However, the attendant gave him a cold, mocking look before rolling his eyes and snorting. "Look, this is no place for beggars. Take your coins somewhere else," said the attendant, with a sarcastic smile on his lips. Jose's heart sank. He felt embarrassment wrap around him like a heavy cloak. He knew he wasn't welcome in many places, but the cruel way he was treated at that moment hit him deeply. He didn't want anything for free, just a little dignity to buy something with the few coins he had. All around, the gazes of the other customers were even more cutting. Some began to whisper among themselves, while others laughed mischievously. "Look at this guy's outfit," commented a man sitting near the window, followed by a mocking laugh. "It looks like it came straight out of a horror movie," replied a woman with a cruel smile. Jose, who had already endured so many hardships throughout his life, felt tears welling up in his eyes. "I didn't want to cry in front of everyone, but the pain of humiliation seemed unbearable." I'm just asking for coffee. Please, he repeated, this time almost like a desperate plea. The attendant, seeing that Jose insisted, decided to end the scene in the worst possible way. Listen here, old man, go away. We don't want your misery here. Go back to the street you came from. The attendant then gestured to one of the security guards, who approached and, without saying a word, indicated that Jose should leave. With his heart sinking and his dignity in pieces, Jose began to turn to leave. The laughter in the background seemed to echo in his mind, and each step he took towards the cafe's exit seemed heavier than the last. He knew that living on the streets was difficult, but the cruelty of people who had so much and still chose to humiliate someone who had nothing was what hurt the most. When Jose finally reached the door of the cafe, he felt the cold of the street once again. But now, that cold seemed preferable to the suffocating heat of humiliation inside the place. He left without looking back, with an aching heart and a wounded soul, wondering how the world had become so indifferent. Jose dragged himself to the sidewalk in front of the cafe, each step feeling as if he were carrying the weight of a lifetime of hardship. When he finally sat down, his frail body gave way, and he bowed his head down, his shoulders hunched under the weight of humiliation and hunger. Tears ran down his wrinkled face, staining his skin already marked by time and the harsh elements of life on the streets. For a few minutes, Jose just stood there, with his eyes fixed on the ground, trying to understand how the world could be so cruel. But even in the midst of pain, he did not allow resentment to take over his heart. He had learned, through decades of suffering, that bitterness would bring nothing but more despair. Jose took a deep breath, still with tears in his eyes, and did what he always did when his strength failed him. He prayed. With his hands clasped in his lap, he began his silent prayer. Lord, I know that you see me, even when the world turns its back on me. I know that, somewhere, there is still hope and compassion. I don't ask for wealth nor glory, just a little bread and a place to rest, just enough to keep going another day. His prayer was simple but full of faith, as it always had been. Even with nothing, Joseph still believed that God would not abandon him. As the words flowed from his heart, a silent peace began to envelop Joseph. He felt as if, for a brief moment, the noise of the city around him had been drowned out, and that, in that moment, only he and God existed. Faith was the only thing he had, the only wealth that was never taken from him. And it was this faith that kept him standing, even when everything seemed lost. Jose raised his eyes to the gray sky and felt a light breeze pass over his face. For many, it would just be the common afternoon wind, but for him it was a sign that your prayer had been heard. He believed that somehow his silent plea would not be in vain. I had always believed that God worked in the simplest details, in the small, unexpected kindnesses of life. Even feeling the emptiness in his stomach and the cold in his bones, Jose smiled slightly. It was a smile that carried centuries of resilience and perseverance. He knew that somehow help would come, maybe not as he expected, maybe not right away, but his faith never let him doubt that God always watched over him. It was this conviction that kept him going, even in the midst of the most violent storms. Jose closed his eyes for a moment, focusing on the peace that prayer brought him. He had no idea that, at that very moment, the answer to his plea was already on its way. Life always surprises, and God, in his wisdom, works in mysterious and often miraculous ways. When Jose opened his eyes again, he sat down on the floor, taking a deep breath. The tears had dried, and although his body was tired, his soul felt lighter. He was ready for whatever came next, prepared to accept any help or challenge that life threw at him. Even there, alone and helpless, Jose refused to give up. He believed that something good would still happen, and that his prayer, however humble, would be heard. While Jose remained sitting on the sidewalk, still recovering from the prayer that had comforted him, the activity in the cafe continued as usual. Cars passed by, people chatted animatedly, and the sound of cups clinking on the counter echoed softly through the air. However, amidst the hectic routine of that day, a distinct figure appeared at the entrance of the cafe. Anna, A woman with an elegant posture and a determined look got out of her luxury car and walked towards the location. Anna was known in the city not only for her fortune, but also for the discreet and humble way in which she dealt with her success. From an early age, he had learned the value of hard work, starting his career in simple conditions and, with great determination, building an empire. Despite her luxurious lifestyle, she had never forgotten her origins. Whenever she saw someone in need, something in her heart pushed her to help. And at that moment, upon entering the cafe, she immediately noticed the frail and worn-looking man sitting outside. As she walked through the door, Anna noticed the disdainful looks and discomfort that customers and employees gave Jose. The scene bothered her deeply. It wasn't just the fact of seeing a helpless elderly man, but the coldness and lack of empathy from those around him. She, who had overcome so many difficulties in life, could not ignore the silent cruelty unfolding before her eyes. As she approached the counter, Anna heard some nasty comments about Jose, said jokingly by some employees. They laughed, not realizing the seriousness of what they were doing. "Why would someone like that come in here?" mocked one of them, unaware that his attitude was being observed by someone important. Anna couldn't believe what she was hearing. She looked at Jose, who kept his head down, still visibly shaken by the humiliation he had just suffered. With a heavy heart, Anna knew she needed to do something. That man deserved respect, deserved to be treated with dignity, regardless of his condition. She had been through times in her own life where she was underestimated and mistreated, and she knew what it was like to be judged on your appearance. His decision to act was immediate. Anna walked to the counter firmly. The employees, upon recognizing who she was, instantly changed their attitude, offering her the best service. But instead of accepting the VIP treatment offered to her, Anna made a point of directing her words to Jose. "I want you to serve him first," she said, pointing to the man sitting on the sidewalk. "Whatever he wants, put it on my account." The cafe, which until then had been filled with conversation and laughter, suddenly fell silent. Staff and customers were stunned. No one expected the richest woman in that city to take such an action. They stared in disbelief while Anna, calmly and determinedly, waited for her orders to be carried out. There was no arrogance in his gesture, but genuine empathy for the man. The attendant, not knowing how to react, swallowed and obeyed. He addressed Jose, who still didn't understand what was happening. "What do you want, sir?" asked the attendant, this time without the sarcastic tone from before. Jose looked at Anna, perplexed by what he was witnessing. He didn't know who she was, but the kindness in her eyes was enough to make him feel like something miraculous was happening. Anna smiled gently at Jose and said, "Today, you are not alone." His simple sentence was like a warm hug, bringing a relief that Jose hadn't experienced in a long time. The people around him, who minutes before were laughing at him, now watched in silence, unable to understand the depth of that gesture. The atmosphere in the cafe has completely changed. What was once contempt and humiliation turned into surprise and awe. Anna didn't just offer Jose a snack. She gave him back his dignity, and in doing so, she taught everyone present a lesson in humanity that they would never forget. Anna, determined and with a heart full of compassion, took a few steps towards Jose. The looks of curiosity and judgment from the cafe's customers didn't bother her in the slightest. She knew she was about to do something that would leave a lasting mark, not only on that man's life, but also on the hearts of everyone around her. As he approached, his eyes met Jose's, who, surprised, could not believe that such an elegant and distinguished woman was paying attention to him. With a soft and welcoming smile, Anna bent down slightly to speak to him. "Come with me," she said in a tender voice full of warmth. "You are my guest today." Jose, still shocked by the unexpected kindness, hesitated for a moment. He looked around in disbelief at the scene unfolding. The people who minutes ago ignored him now watched, perplexed what was happening. Those same people who had treated him with contempt now observed the situation silently, without understanding the depth of what they were witnessing. Anna extended her hand to Jose, and, with a mixture of fear and gratitude, He accepted the gesture. With effort, the elderly man stood up, his legs shaking due to age and the hard life he had led. Anna guided him back to the cafe, opening the door for him with all the dignity he deserved. It was as if, in that moment, she was giving him not just a meal, but the dignity and respect that had long been denied him. As they entered, the silence intensified. The atmosphere that had previously been filled with evil laughter and hushed conversations now seemed more reverent. The attendant, who had previously been primarily responsible for Jose's humiliation, stood still, unresponsive, with his eyes wide open. He didn't know what to do or say in the situation. But Anna, firm and determined, looked at him and said with an authoritative tone, but without losing her kindness, "Serve him the best meal you have." The customers, who were expecting to see Jose rejected and humiliated again, were shocked. What began as a simple moment of disdain turned into a lesson in humanity and empathy. The faces that had previously carried expressions of contempt now showed a mixture of shame and bewilderment. No one could believe that Anna, a woman of high status, was taking care of this man who everyone had ignored. While Anna and Jose sat at the table, the server, still dazed, quickly began preparing the order. He chose the most expensive and elaborate dishes on the menu, trying, in some way, to correct the mistake he had made. At each dish he brought to the table, Jose looked at it with gratitude and disbelief. It had been a long time since he had seen such a large meal, much less been treated with so much respect. Anna, always with a calm smile on her face, talked to Jose while he ate. She didn't want him to feel embarrassed or uncomfortable. He asked about her life, showed interest in her stories, and with each word, Jose felt his heart open more to that woman. It wasn't just the food that comforted him at that moment. It was the fact that, for the first time in many years, he was being treated as a human being worthy of respect. The cafe, which was normally a place of movement and haste, was now enveloped in an atmosphere of reflection. The people around couldn't take their eyes off that scene. Some even began to feel bad for having ignored Jose moments before. It was as if Anna had ignited a spark of conscience in everyone present, showing that a simple gesture of compassion could transform a moment of shame into something great. Jose, emotional, could barely hold back his tears. "I'll never forget this," he said, his voice breaking. "You didn't have to do this for me." Anna, smiling softly, replied, "We all need each other, Jose. What I did today is just what every human being should do. You deserve so much more than just a meal." And in that instant, what began as a day of humiliation turned into a true miracle, a living example of how love and compassion can change everything. The scene in the cafe, which had previously been full of laughter and nasty comments, turned into a disconcerting silence as soon as Anna took the initiative to help Jose. The customers, who had watched the beggar's humiliation with disdain or indifference, were now unable to take their breath away. The eyes of the elegant woman who treated him with so much respect. The feeling of unease was palpable as everyone tried to process what was happening before them. The attendant, who minutes before had disdainfully expelled Jose, felt his face turn red with embarrassment. He was now visibly disconcerted, rushing to prepare Jose's order in a hurry, fearing that the situation would get even worse for him. With each dish he served, his expression showed regret, as if each gesture was an attempt to correct the mistake he had made. But the weight of the judgment he himself had inflicted on Joseph still hung over him. The other employees at the cafe, who had ignored the situation from the beginning, also began to act differently. Some moved around nervously, cleaning tables and organizing the environment, as if the simple act of work could remove the guilt they now felt for not having done anything to prevent the previous humiliation. They exchanged glances with each other, trying to understand how the situation had changed so drastically in a matter of minutes. Anna, always calm and self-assured, looked around the cafe, noticing the discomfort and embarrassment on everyone's faces. She knew her action was having a profound impact and decided to seize the moment to deliver a clear message. In a firm and calm voice, she said, "This man, like all of us, deserves respect. A person's dignity is not measured by what they have or how they look. I hope that from now on, Everyone can treat him, and any other human being, with the decency they deserve. Anna's words echoed in the cafe, and everyone present felt the weight of the lesson. There was no denying the truth of what she had said. Each person there was confronted with the reality of their prejudices and hasty judgments. No one dared to argue or dispute what she had said. Most clients remained silent, reflecting on their own attitudes and behaviors. Some gazes dropped to the floor, ashamed of having been part of that humiliating situation. The attendant, now completely embarrassed, looked at Anna with a pleading expression, as if he was waiting for a sign of forgiveness. He knew his behavior had been unacceptable and, with shaking hands, continued to serve Joseph with the utmost care. Anna, however, did not give him the satisfaction of an approving look. She knew that actions would speak louder than words at that moment. His silence was enough to make it clear that, to be worthy of respect, the server would need much more than just serving food. Jose, in turn, felt enveloped in a mix of emotions. The gratitude for Anna's gesture was immense, but he was also aware of how the situation had changed in the blink of an eye. He knew that many of those present at the cafe didn't see him as a person before Anna intervened. Now, however, he was being treated as an honored guest, a shocking contrast to the contempt he had felt moments before. As time passed, the atmosphere in the cafe began to transform. The initial discomfort gave way to a more reflective atmosphere, as if people were trying to absorb the silent lesson Anna had imparted. There was no more laughter or mean jokes. Everyone seemed to understand that they had witnessed something greater than a simple meal given to a man in need. They had seen a lesson in compassion and humanity that many would find difficult to forget. When the meal was finally served, Anna watched closely as Jose began to eat. With each bite, he seemed to regain not only his physical strength, but also a bit of his dignity. Anna's gesture had restored something that the harsh life on the streets and constant humiliation had almost destroyed within him. And, at the same time, she had changed the hearts of everyone there, without saying more than necessary. The scene in the cafe, which had started with humiliation and contempt, had now turned into a true example of humanity. Anna, without even raising her voice, showed everyone that true wealth is not in money or status, but in the ability to see the value of each human being, regardless of their appearance or condition. As Anna sits at the table with Jose, the 90-year-old beggar, something unexpected begins to happen. She asks gently about his life, curious to understand more about the man who, despite his current condition, maintained an air of dignity and serenity. Jose, still moved by her kindness, begins to relate parts of his story. He tells how, in his youth, he worked as a mechanic in a small workshop. His face, marked by time and hardship, lights up briefly as he talks about the days when he helped people with whatever he could, often without expecting anything in return. Anna listens attentively, and as he progresses in his narrative, a strange feeling begins to grow in her heart. Jose mentions a specific moment in his life, many years ago, when he encountered a family in trouble. Their car had broken down in the middle of the road on a stormy night, and he, passing by, did not hesitate to stop and offer help. He remembers having repaired the family car, even without having suitable parts or tools, just with his skill and goodwill. That night, he decided not to charge anything, as he knew that family was in difficulty. Anna's heart races. That story sounded incredibly familiar. As Jose continues to talk, she begins to piece together her own past. She was just a child at that time, but the memory of that incident, of the kindness of a stranger who helped her parents when they needed it most, was something her mother often mentioned. His parents, young and with little financial means, had felt deeply grateful for Jose's gesture. He appeared in their lives at the exact moment they needed it, and his generosity was something that marked the family forever. Anna looks fixedly at Jose, while he, with distant eyes, remembers those days. She feels a lump in her throat when she realizes that the man in front of her, the beggar humiliated and forgotten by society, is the same person who one day saved her family from a moment of despair. The irony of the situation hits her hard. This man who, so many years ago, helped her family without asking for anything in return, was now in the position of needing help, and she was put there to give back. Jose, without realizing the impact his words were having, continues telling other stories, but Anna can no longer concentrate. His mind is filled with the memories of that day and the gratitude his parents always had for that kind mechanic. She feels as if she is experiencing a true miracle. Divine providence had brought Joseph back into his life, this time in a completely unexpected way. Anna has always believed in miracles, but she never imagined she would be part of one as powerful as that. Anna leans forward, her eyes full of emotion, and gently touches Jose's hand, gently interrupting him. "Jose," she says, her voice breaking, "you don't know who I am, but I know you. That car you fixed years ago was my family car. You helped my parents when they needed it most. I never forgot the story, but I never knew who the man was who saved us that night." Jose is silent for a moment, clearly surprised by the revelation. Her eyes fill with tears as she realizes the magnitude of what Anna was saying. The man that society had despised for so long, the man who was humiliated in that cafe, was the same man who had made a difference in the lives of Anna and her family many years before. Now, fate had brought them together again, but this time, it was Anna who was in a position to help. Anna can't contain her tears, and the same happens with Jose. The connection between the two strengthens even more. For her, it was no coincidence that he was there that day. It was a true miracle from God, a turn of events that neither of them could have predicted. At that moment, Anna realizes that her mission was not just to offer a meal or a temporary gesture of kindness. She felt that she had been chosen to repay what Jose had done for her family in the deepest and most meaningful way possible. The feeling of gratitude that fills Anna's heart is indescribable. She knows she can't change Jose's difficult past, but she can change his present and future. And at that moment, Anna decides that she will do everything in her power to give Jose the dignity and respect he deserves, not just as a gesture of compassion, but as an act of divine justice. Anna was still emotional about the revelation she had just received. The tears in his eyes were not just of gratitude, but of a deep understanding of how fate had guided that encounter. She looked at Jose, who remained stunned by this turn of events. The man who, until then, thought he had been forgotten by the world, now found himself faced with an opportunity he had never imagined. Anna, her voice breaking, held Jose's calloused hands and said, "You saved my family when we needed it most, and now God has given me the chance to repay your kindness." Those words made Jose tremble. He wasn't used to receiving kindness, much less such grandiose proposals. He tried to mumble something, perhaps refuse or say a humble thank you, but Anna didn't give him time to deny what she knew was the right thing to do. She took a deep breath and, with a firm and determined look, said that she would do everything possible to change Jose's life, in the same way he changed hers so many years ago. "Jose, you will no longer live on the streets. From today, I want you to have a place to call yours. A home, food, and all the support you need. This is the least I can do for someone who has shown so much generosity to my family in the past," Anna stated with conviction. Jose, who had already faced so many adversities in his life, was in disbelief. To him, these words sounded like a distant dream, something he never thought could happen in his life. The crowd inside the cafe, who had previously looked at him with contempt, now watched the scene with a mixture of surprise and admiration. Anna's gesture was more than simple charity. It was a profound recognition that the world can be cruel, but that there is also room for gratitude and kindness to manifest themselves in powerful and unexpected ways. The silence that took over the cafe was now filled with an atmosphere of respect and humility. Jose, still not knowing how to react, looked at Anna with teary eyes. I don't know what to say. I didn't do anything special. I just did what was right that day," he mumbled, trying to find the right words. But Anna, with a soft smile, replied, "It was much more than you imagine, Jose. Your kindness that night changed my life and that of my family. Now it's my turn to give back." From that moment on, Anna did everything she promised. She found a cozy home for Jose, a place where he could live with dignity, without the need to worry about cold, hunger, or loneliness. But it wasn't just that. Anna committed to being present in Jose's life, visiting him frequently, ensuring that he had medical assistance and all the support he needed to grow old with comfort and peace. What began as a gesture of compassion turned into a deep friendship between the two. As time passed, Jose started to smile again, something he hadn't done in a long time. He, who had lost hope of a better life, now lived the last years of his life surrounded by love, gratitude, and respect. Ana, in turn, felt that this meeting had not been the result of chance. It was as if a greater force had guided her steps to that cafe on that specific day so that she could do what was right. The story of Jose and Ana quickly spread throughout the city. The cafe, which had previously been the scene of a humiliating scene, was now remembered as the place where a true miracle happened. The people who witnessed Ana's gesture and Jose's transformation were deeply touched, rethinking their attitudes and the way they treated those who were on the margins of society. In the end, Joseph not only found a new life, but also became a symbol of hope, and that kindness, even when forgotten, can always return in surprising ways. Ana, on the other hand, saw her gesture as the fulfillment of something that had been in her heart for a long time, the desire to return a favor that she never forgot. Thus, both found peace, each in their own way, and the certainty that genuine kindness will always be rewarded. The transformation in Jose's life began the moment he accepted Ana's help. The man, who previously lived on the streets, without hope and strength, began to receive constant medical care, something he hadn't had for years. With Ana's support, he was taken to a hospital, where doctors and nurses took care of his fragile health. Jose, who had suffered so much, now felt that his life was being renewed. With proper treatment, he began to regain his strength, something he never imagined possible at that point in his life. After recovering, Ana made sure that Jose received new and dignified clothes. For him, the simple act of wearing something clean and comfortable seemed like a luxury he hadn't experienced in a long time. When he first looked in the mirror, he barely recognized the man reflected there. The sad and tired expression began to give way to an expression of gratitude and hope. It was the beginning of a new phase, and Jose knew that it had all started with a gesture of compassion from Ana. The story of the meeting between Ana and Jose soon spread throughout the city. Local newspapers and social media began sharing the story of how an elderly man, humiliated in a cafe, had his life transformed by a millionaire who recognized him as the man who once helped her family. The news deeply touched the hearts of many people, both due to Ana's generosity and Jose's resilience, who, even after so many years of suffering, never lost his faith. Those who had humiliated Jose in the cafe now, upon learning his story, began to look at him with different eyes. They realized that the man they had despised was, in fact, a person of great value, who had shown kindness at a crucial moment in Ana's life. These same people who had previously laughed and treated him cruelly, now treated him cruelly. Respect and even admiration. The change in Joseph's life was not just external, but also in the way he was seen by those around him. Ana made sure that Jose didn't feel alone on his new journey. She visited him regularly, always bringing words of affection and support. Furthermore, he made sure he had everything he needed, from healthy food to the comfort of a warm home. Jose, who had spent decades on the streets, now lived in a small house with a garden, where he could sit in the sun and enjoy what was left of his life with tranquility and dignity. Jose's transformation also affected those who knew him, especially the residents of the neighborhood where he lived before losing everything. Many people who previously ignored homeless people began to see these people in a different way. Jose's story has become an example of how life can change drastically, and how acts of kindness can have profound and lasting impacts. Over time, Jose came to be seen as an inspiring figure in the city. Her story of overcoming and the miracle provided by Ana served as a lesson for many. Not only did he have his life transformed, but he also helped transform the way society viewed homeless people. His example led others to practice more acts of solidarity, helping those who, like him, had been forgotten. Jose, who has always been a man of faith, saw everything that was happening as a true miracle. He believed that God had guided Ana to that cafe on that particular day so that she could help him. For him, this was proof that kindness and faith always return, in one form or another. He lived with gratitude every day, knowing that his story had touched so many people and that, thanks to Anna, he had a new chance to live with dignity. The transformation in José's life was not just material. He gained something he never expected to find again, a sense of belonging. Alongside Anna, and with the support of people who now admired him, José found a place in the world. That man who was once despised and humiliated now lived his last years surrounded by respect, affection, and, above all, hope. José, now enjoying a completely different life, reflects on everything that has happened in the last few months. He had been rejected, humiliated, and pushed to the margins of society, but through an unexpected act of kindness, his life took a turn he never could have predicted. Sitting in his new home, surrounded by comfort and peace, José knew that what had happened to him was more than luck. It was a true miracle. He understood that his faith, which he had kept alive even in his darkest moments, had been the key to his redemption. Every day, José took a moment to thank God for the second chance he had received. He knew that without the divine presence in his life, he would never have been able to endure the years of suffering on the streets. His faith sustained him when nothing else seemed capable of doing so, and he believed that God had sent Hannah to be the instrument of his salvation. José, who was previously invisible to the eyes of society, now lived with dignity, proving that faith is never in vain. Anna, in turn, had also learned a valuable lesson in humility. Although she had always prided herself on her generosity and compassion, her experience with José made her realize how powerful kindness can be. She had made a simple choice to help a man in need, but that decision had transformed not only his life, but hers as well. Anna became an even more active advocate for social causes, inspired by José's gratitude and the change she saw in her own life when she helped someone. The story of José and Anna quickly spread throughout the city, and the lesson of humility touched the hearts of many people. The attitudes of the people around began to change. Those who previously ignored or despised the homeless began to see them as human beings with complex life stories, worthy of compassion and respect. Anna's action inspired many to reflect on their own attitudes towards those in vulnerable situations. Joseph's faith also became a symbol of hope for many who faced adversity. People from different parts of the city came to José, looking for his words of wisdom and his life experience. He, with his serene voice and kind gaze, always shared the same message. Never lose faith, no matter how difficult the journey may be. God is always by our side, even in the moments when we feel most alone. His words echoed everywhere, bringing comfort and hope to those who needed it. José began to attend the local church regularly, being received with affection by members of the community. He had become an example of redemption and humility, living proof that faith can transform lives in unimaginable ways. Each time he entered the church, he said a silent prayer of thanksgiving, not only for his new life, but also for the lessons he had learned during the years of suffering. He knew that those difficult times had shaped his soul and prepared him for the miracle to come. Anna, who remained a constant presence in José's life, was deeply grateful to have had the opportunity to repay the kindness he had shown his family so many years ago. The relationship between the two was much more than simple gratitude. It was a friendship based on mutual respect and admiration. Together, they organized charity events and rallies to help other homeless people, using their stories as inspiration to do good. The message of faith and compassion that José and Anna began to share with the world resonated deeply with everyone who listened. They showed that regardless of material wealth or life circumstances, true wealth lies in how we treat each other. The power of love, kindness, and faith can transform any situation, no matter how hopeless it may seem. The story of José and Anna ends with a powerful lesson in humility and faith, teaching that God acts in mysterious ways, but always with a greater purpose. Joseph's journey is a testimony that we should never lose hope, even in the most difficult times, as the miracle may be waiting just ahead. And, above all, Anna's example shows that a simple act of compassion can be the beginning of a complete transformation in someone's life and the world around them.